Hey everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. We're looking at Mark's Super XL-925. This came to him via a friend's grandfather, I think, if I'm remembering right. Probably messed that up a little bit, but you get the picture. It's not fully assembled, and in the note, the email exchange back and forth, he said needed somebody to assess the ignition, and I would say that that is accurate. You guys can see that. There be no spark, and even with just a regular spark plug, there's no spark. So, we'll get this out of the way. We're going to do some spark testing. I've got a rather dirty page printed from the service manual that I have posted on my website that tells you how to check all this stuff with a basic multimeter. So, we're going to do that. But before we get any further, I like to look a saw over when I get it, just to get some ideas of what it's going to need. Now, this one's going to need more work than I thought. The piston is fine. Now, I'm looking in the viewfinder, so I'm going to trust that you guys can see what I can see. Why in the world should we be seeing that? Well, the answer is we shouldn't. This piston is 180 degrees off. Now, how long it's been that way, God only knows. Maybe all of its life, I don't know. But you always want the ring opening buried inside the engine, because at that point there's no transfer ports. Here, it's open, could build up with carbon and create just one hell of a mess in here. So, once we figure out the ignition, going to pull the cylinder off and flip this piston 180 just so that it's where it belongs. But for now, let's figure out what our ignition problems are on this saw. And that, you got to get into here, get some stuff apart. Well, there. Oh, wow. So we've got a lead hanging out in the wide open here. I'd say it's broken off from right there. The spark plug lead isn't even in the transformer here. I mean, we can't be that lucky, can we? It's still gonna have to come apart, but I'd kind of like to know what the hell I'm dealing with here before getting it all the way apart if I can. Trying to decide if that means somebody's been in here or if it's just had some rough treatment. I can't tell by looking at those screws. Alright. Over this, that lead's broken down, or not broken, but the insulation's broken. I would say the most common thing on a 925, even more so than somebody leaning it out and burning it up, ouch, is these damn leads that are buried under here that get hot and break. Whether it's the insulation or the whole bloody lead, doesn't really matter. It's not good. But I'd love to test this. If I knew all the components are good going into it, that would change this equation quite a bit. I'm going to say it's part of why I like to inspect a saw, to know as much as I can as I'm getting into it. Alright, that is a terrible crimp. And I should be ashamed of myself for even attempting this. This may have already been attempted, and that's why it's so short. Damn. I just need to be able to roll this thing over once or twice. And this is getting a little irritating. But what's a little irritating on video? You guys haven't seen that for, well, since my last video. Son of a bitch. Clearly the flywheel is in the way here. Oh, you miserable little puke. Just get the hell on there and don't be a shit. God, I don't think... okay, that's it. That is too far broken. Somebody has attempted to do this already. And that is part of why we are where we are. It's too bad. And really... Well, something was storing a charge, now wasn't it? Wow. Okay. I'm glad that didn't actually zap me. That was a nice blue snap there. I'm going to guess that all the components are good. And it's just that bum lead, and I'm hoping that bum lead is the one that can actually be replaced. And I think it is. The kill switch lead is actually molded into this pickup coil here. Or is that the generator coil? That might be called the generator. I always mix these up. Which one is that one? Yeah, that's the generator coil. And that's the one that has leads that break all the time. Like I said, one of them plugs in, two are molded into it, so the insulation breaks off and you got bare wire, or the wire breaks, you're just kind of, well, effed, quite frankly. Alright, it's going to be a pain in my butt. Okay. So I can tell that has not been off by virtue of how hard it was to get off. Alright, so we're going to reach a point here. In theory, we ought to be able to get this whole ignition assembly off without a major disassembly. It's a bit of a pain, but it can be done. Just trying to decide if that's what I want to do, though, because I'm going to have to take the throttle handle off, the carburetor, all that junk, in order to flip that piston. So if you didn't have to do all that junk, you'd clean this out. Take those 4 bolts out right there. And in theory, you can put the flywheel nut back on, get a little tension on this, and carefully, and just doing light taps, get this to start coming up. In theory. Let me clean this up a little bit, and I'll do a little thinking, and we'll come back. Okay, that's a little bit cleaner. We'll try getting this module off, or the whole, oh shit. That's right, this is a pain. Not really room. I made it work. coming out hard. Yes, the factory applied Loctite there, and yes, we will apply it on the way back in, too. Alright. Based on that, that's never been apart. So this may be a royal pain in the tuchus. But we will see if she is willing to start separating here. Without more serious, drastic measures. There, look at that. It's already loose. And I didn't break a damn thing. So many times I've seen, where a guy is pried under here. I've done it myself. And it almost always results in breakage. So I'm going to take this spark plug lead back out. I'm reaching under here to get the kill switch lead loose. I'm not sure that kill switch is any good. That lead's broken too. That could be a problem. And then we'll see if we can get I think this should slip off that module without giving me any issues. God dang it. Ah! Piece of crap. There, now could you see that tab broke off of the kill switch wire, which is not great. Look, will you just turn over and stay put, for crying out loud? God damn it. This is not necessary. Dipstick. What I'm trying to do is align the keyway here in that module. I just want this thing to come off. Dumbass. There. Take it that was too much to ask for to not have any drama. Alright. So this may have already had a repair. We can put a new end on that. But you see how those two leads go in right there? Now they look okay. This is the replaceable lead. This goes to the transformer. So what I've got to do is fish these out, get the new one in there, and put a new wad of silicone on it. I am 99% certain that's all that's wrong with this. And the fact that this was broken loose and maybe shorting out occasionally, I'm going to say this module's good. And we're just going to hope for the best. I am going to deduce those facts based on what I saw. So we're going to go with it. If I'm wrong, what's going to end up happening is we're going to come back to a troubleshooting. But basically, again, this is on the web. And it tells you what to start with, what leads to unplug using your multimeter. It gives you the values in there, the resistance through the windings. One of the few ignition systems that they actually do that with. But even then, there's always a chance, that you're going to end up replacing more than one thing. So, anyhow, I don't need to do the rest of this on camera. We've got enough video evidence of how to take one of these 925s apart. I'm just going to go ahead and get that thing flipped around, replace that lead. Maybe I'll come back. Once I've got this flipped, maybe I'll come back and show you guys that. And yeah, that's where we'll pick up from. Okay. Glad I got into that. That was also a wrist pin retainer. missing on the piston, which is not good. Didn't look like it had ingested it, just looked like it was missed. Alright, I'm going to try to do this without making a total mess out of everything. What we need to do is get this one lead replaced. Get some of this silicone off of here first. And what I want to do is take as little stuff apart as is necessary. But we're going to go ahead and take this module off. We're going to replace the crank seal because I think it was leaking. Minor leak, but a leak nonetheless, and I'll show you why in a second. Or at least why I believe that. Oh, come on. Rougher than I wanted to be, but okay. Wipe this off. Alright. See this minor discoloration right there? I'm actually going to clean that up before we put this on. A little brake cleaner. It's an accumulation of what I think is a bit of a carbon and a bit of ingested sawdust. And since it's right there on that crank counterweight right behind this seal, that's why I think that's the problem. And that is definitely worn. So we're going to feed it a new one. And yes, I do keep a lot of these around in the shop here for my use on just stuff like this. Seesaw. There we go. Nice and flush. Now we're good. Alright. So I'm unpeeling this. And I'm being gentle because that's one of the ones that goes in that module. Then we can get to El Broco. That trash. Now these later replacement leads have kind of a woven fabric on the outside, so I'd like to think that they're going to be a little more durable. This is a little tricky. There's a little extra, but not a lot. So what I'm going to do is feed this up in here. I'm going to plug it in. And we'll feed it through loom. I'm just pulling it fairly tight. Okay. And let's put this one back in. This would be a good time to check to see if there's any broken rubber. I already see that there is not on this other lead. which makes me think that module's been replaced at some point. Okay. You can see why I did things in the order that I did. Oh, come on, baby. You can't replace... Oh, I didn't sync. Ha! Dummy. The back of this module, you see, has to go down in there a little bit. This tool even has that. There we go. Got a little carried away. You know, you could just line up and quit pissing me off. That is a thing. All right. Yeah, see, there's even grease right here. This is inside the engine. That's why I believe that crank seal was leaking. But it won't now. Alright. We'll just pretend that we didn't think that lead was the problem. Pretend this meter's not going to jump out of my hands and piss me off, too. Alright. The capacitor discharge magneto can be considered okay if the spark will jump a 3/8 inch gap when turning the engine at cranking speed, which is why I use my little fancy tool there. 3/8 is actually a pretty big gap. Usually 1/4 inch is what most specs call for. Check the magneto with a volt ohm meter. Proceed as follows. Remove starter housing, disconnect wire from ignition switch. So that's our, we still need to crimp a new terminal on there. And I think there's enough left to do that. Check, there's no continuity through the switch, blah blah blah, so that's just checking the switch. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. Alright, be sure the storage capacitor is discharged before touching connections. Flip ignition switch to off. Resistance through secondary high tension winding of transformer coil should be 2400 to 2900 ohms, and resistance through primary winding should be 0.2 to 0.4. Connect the ohm meter leads between the spark plug wire and ground, and then between the input terminal and ground. So that's this right here. I don't have the spark plug wire on there, and I'm pretty sure that little blue pop we had took care of that. Alright, 2288. So that's a little on the low side in terms of resistance there, just a little, but I'll bet with the spark plug wire plugged in it'd be a little higher, so I'm not going to go too goofy yet. And from the input to ground, 0.4, so that's right at spec. So that would imply the transformer essentially is within spec. Transformer coil does not test within spec. Renew coil and recheck at cranking speed. If magneto does not produce spark, check generator as follows. So again, this is where terminology, that's the generator right there. So we're checking it next. Disconnect from generator to generator terminal on module and switch at ignition switch. So the switch is disconnected. All these leads are disconnected. Connect the negative lead of the ohm meter to the ground wire from the generator. That's that right there. To the positive lead of the generator, the G wire. So that is that right there. The ohm meter should register continuity through the generator. Reverse the leads. I may have that reversed. There we go. I had it reversed. So continuity. Okay. Now it talks about a further check. Remove the spark plug, reinstall the rotor, leaving the G disconnected. When G wire is that one over to this module. Connect a positive red from the voltmeter to the G from the generator. Yeah, this is ridiculous. We're not doing that. This sounds like a giant pain in my ass, and I'm not going to go down that road. They're talking about cranking it over and getting a volt reading. A partial check of the ignition module can be made using the ohm meter. With the ohm meter set to the 1000 scale, connect the positive red to the terminal marked Gen and negative to the module connection ground. An instant deflection of the ohm meter needle. Okay, so the battery powered, that won't work. We're not doing that either. So, I'm going to say that based on what I've checked so far, it's good. And we kind of got that suspicion when it made that nice little spark as I was trying to disassemble stuff. So, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and install this. I'm going to crimp a new terminal on here and we'll come back for an actual spark check. Okay, so disappointingly, we do not have spark. So remember how the transformer I said was so close but it wasn't quite within spec? That's where we're going next. We'll pull something out of my bone pile here. And we're going to replace this real quick. And see if we can get a better result. This one tests exactly where it's supposed to through. Ouch. I hate it when that happens. I thought it was actually going to come out. Instead it tried to stab me in the... no, not tried. Did stab me in the finger. That was cute. That's always nice. Anyway, we're going to get this thing replaced real quick. These screws don't have a very deep slot. And they're fine thread, of course. That's interesting. This one must ground internally because it doesn't have a separate ground lead, and I certainly don't see where one is broken off. God damn these little screws. Most importantly, it does test through the ground lead, or the high tension lead at an appropriate spec. That's why a lot of shops just kept spare parts on hand that they knew were good, that would be tester models, just to be certain. Rather than fighting this, I'm going to just keep the existing spark plug lead, I think. There we go. Okay. This is part of why I really hoped we had gotten it dealt with while the saw was apart. Replacing these individual components with the throttle handle reassembled is doable, but it's not what a person's going to call fun. Oh, now knock that off. So I'm thinking about it. I didn't need to pull that stinking spark plug boot. Yeah. No, I didn't. If I did. I know the one on this, that was on the lead on this module, was all, the boot was all torn up, so I wouldn't reuse it. Hold this ground wire from the generator core so as I tighten the screw it doesn't jam up at a weird angle there. Alright, now we can get this little delicate fart to go back on without any bad stuff. There we go. Now, I did pull that boot off and I didn't need to. So I didn't plan ahead all that well on that one. There we go. Alright, now if we don't have spark this time, I might be an unhappy camper. Now, let me rephrase that. I will be an unhappy camper. Some sort of debris in here that's altering the spark path, but I can sure hear it snapping. Ow. good enough. We're there. Before this can get mixed up, in the garbage can it goes. So, maybe when Homelite published specs, they meant them. That's a kind of a rhetorical statement. Of course they meant them. I mean, we've all probably run across condensers that are just right on the edge, that, you know, they still work, but they're just outside of the value. It's when they're starting to get weak, and in this case, that transformer that was slightly outside of that 2400 ohms, it was down at 22 or 22 and a half. Something had broken down in there. That's what wasn't making, allowing it to make spark. So anyway, I've obviously got a lot more work to do on this, so I need to go through that carburetor, get the clutch and everything back together. I need to finish unpacking the box. There's a bunch of parts that were actually purchased from me included in there that I need to get into. You can see we've got a clutch issue. At least one missing shoe, and I'll probably check and make sure there's no others that are actually broken or anything. But anyhow, a little bit of work before a test run, but that real main issue of no spark, we got it licked.